dancing.
Moss.
Always dancing to our opening number.
We're always dancing. We're dancing through our lives, Tim Moss. Isn't that the truth?
Absolutely. That's the best way to be. Best way to be.
This is it. Dancing as fast as we can. How are you today?
I'm good. Welcome to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts,
Wendy Stuart
and Tim Moss. Yay!
Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. It is a gorgeous, finally, spring day in New York City.
Yes, it's like 70 degrees and sun shining, and there's
Just
hope.
Beautiful. You know, Tim, I'm all ready for spring. I have to share this with you. On Saturday night, I went to what they call a bonnet bash at the National Arts Club.
I loved that.
Oh my God, it really put my whole head into springtime, right? I had an incredible bonnet. And so did everybody else, by the way, that was there. The one thing I learned, a lot of people knew how to make those bonnets so that they didn't end up with a head injury. Unfortunately, I had 5 pounds on my head that I was attempting to dance with. And I swear to you, the next day I had like one of those, lines of demarcation. It took like 8 hours to get rid of it. So it was such a fun thing to see all these people that were really into it, right? The bonnets. And Daryl Thorne, who does incredible headpieces. He's known on Broadway. He's known all over. He produces this event every year. So a lot of his headpieces were all around the room. Mm-hmm. And then we had artist areas where people had painted things that were just so bright, so uplifting. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is spring.
Well, and then because you were worried that you had a mark on your head, because then we went to see Randy Edelman the next night, and you were fearing that there would be a mark on your forehead, but it was gone by the time you got there. You look fabulous.
Oh my God, thank you so much. And Randy Edelman is an amazing composer. He was at Chelsea Market Table, or Chelsea
Chelsea Table and Stage, I think is what it's
called. Thank you so much, Tim, for clarifying that. But Randy, I love his music, because I'm sure, didn't he just take you away, like his musical scores? Make you think of who you were, what you were doing at that time, what the movie was, who you were. I love it.
Yeah, because he wrote songs for like Barry Manilow and
the Carpenters,
and then film scores for like everything from My Cousin Vinny to I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but it was amazing.
There were so many. MacGyver, and of course we were with great friends that came to visit. So you know what, you can tell after 2 years of more or less like not being able to live our lives the way we want to. We're out.
Everybody in this town is coming out. It's packed everywhere. The night after that, I sang at a fundraiser.
Yes.
Cheer New York, which is gay cheerleaders.
They're fabulous, Tim.
And they're in all the parades, all the pride parades and everything.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I just love them. But they did a fundraiser, and the beneficiary was the Princess Janae House, or Princess Janae Place, which is for young trans youth. And so they asked me if I would sing a song, and I had a ball. It was just wonderful and packed. So everybody is just so happy to be back out and being around other people, and it's just very joyful. It's a very joyful, very festive.
Exactly.
Right now.
Exactly. So. Well, you know what? You mentioned the word joyful.
Yes.
Let me just tell you about our guest today. She is known for what was my favorite sitcom growing up. I love this show. It was called Family Affair. I'm sure you all remember it. And I was such a big fan, right? And then she went on to be in movies, TV, voiceovers, public speaking, empowering people. She is just amazing. She is, to me, like the quintessential powerhouse performer. Let us welcome our guest, who is known as Cissy in Family Affair, Kathleen Garver.
Yay! Hello. How are you?
Oh my gosh! Thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure. And Tim, I met about 4 or 5 years ago in New York, and we just instantly connected. He's so much fun and has so much life. And now meeting you, Wendy, is just a delight.
Oh my gosh. And it's so great that we can all be here together. And Tim, when he had mentioned you a few weeks back, I'm like, oh my God, Cissy from Family Affair. The all-knowing Cissy. Cissy was like, you know, you were such a role model for so many people, because that show to me was probably one of the first that shows families are not the typical nuclear family, right? It was not the typical nuclear family. And the role that you played, the voice of confidence, taking care of Buffy and Jody, so many of us as kids growing up really identified with that. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. And I hear a lot about latchkey kids, and I have some friends, and they didn't have that warmth of family. And as you say, I mean, this was one of the first programs and sitcoms and that didn't have that nuclear family with the mom and the dad. We had our bachelor uncle, and he brought us in after some humming and hawing, along, of course, with Mr. French, who was also and having a teenager and 2 6-year-olds was quite something to adjust to in anybody's life. But The Bachelor made a nice transition.
But you also played it so well. Because she wasn't just a teenager; she had lost her parents. She was responsible for her 2 younger siblings now, but also had to be a teenager at the same time.
Yeah, it was more like a dramedy in many ways, and very touching because of the background that we all had, and it was based on the fact that we were orphans and then taken in, but the situations that's what made it comedic. And it wasn't like one-liner jokes or insults or things like that. It was just, you know, the comedy of an elephant being in a high-rise penthouse and different things that were happening. And I liked the role because actually I was one of the only characters that was allowed to grow and change much more than any of the other characters. I mean, Mr. French was always Mr. French. And was always Mr. French.
Yeah.
And Uncle Bill, you know, still went out with his different ladies or whatever. And the kids grew, but like little Anissa, Buffy had her same ponytails from the time that she was 6, when she was actually almost 9 when the show started, till she was 13. But she was had her ponytails, and I had like 5 different hairstyles. And I was growing up, and I was going to go to the Peace Corps, and I was going to get married. I was going to be a princess in, you know, Austria. So Cissy herself went through a lot of changes, and I'm sure that is true with most people in their lives. Things happen, and how do you adjust to them? And do you go with it, or do you listen to sensible Uncle Bill, or what do you do? It had a little moral at the end of each too, which I liked.
It did. It was interesting the way it was put together. The choice, first of all, for me, the choice of characters, how defined, right? Each one of you was as a character. If you could say that it was a perfect balance in terms of how you played off of each other, and it was extremely situational, I think that really describes it. What was it like for you, though? Here you are, you know, this was your longest running show. Am I correct?
Right. Yes.
What was it like for you at that age in, you know, your real life and Kathy's real life, and then the Cissy life?
Well, first of all, I was in college when I got the role. And I also have a philosophy that in any acting, you have to use a lot of yourself. I mean, who else are you going to be? You know, you're not a hologram. You're not going to invent something that's a 3D, you know, kind of paper person. You are who you are. You have your own sensibilities, your own spirit, your own heart. And I think that one brings that to every role, whether I played like in The Miracle Worker on stage, you know, I brought my own heart to that, whatever role is there. So there was a lot of me in Cissy. There were some parts when I remember I talked to the producer and director, and I said, you know, I really wouldn't go out with that guy. And, you know, he's really not my type. And the producer said, yes, but Cissy would. And I said, oh, okay, then let her go. And that stupid Cissy, here she had an invitation to be a princess in Austria, and I'm
Right.
Austrian anyway, and to live in Vienna with this handsome man. And he says, no, Carl, I love you, but I have to go back to New York. What's wrong with that girl? I never would have done that. Are you kidding me? But,
That's really funny.
that's the character, I guess.
That
Yes.
is-
Well, actually, I think we have a clip. I just kind of like to show Cissy in action.
I've been thinking about him, too. Uncle Bill, Greg is just immature. I don't know. I'm just going to have to meet all types of men before I even consider getting married.
Getting smarter all the time, aren't you?
I'm sorry I couldn't give you a movie star of the family, but Steve.
No place like home.
No, indeed there isn't, sir. A week in Hollywood was fun, but, well, now it's back to work and school.
Hey, Bob, let's go figure out who we're gonna conk on the head with this bottle.
Show them there'll be no conking on school property.
Gee, I never thought I'd hear from him again.
Who?
Ralph Van Dyke. He wants me to come up to the prom at West Point next week.
What's a new one, huh? Ralph Van Dyke.
Mm-hmm. So handsome, Uncle Bill. He's taking me to the most important social event of the whole year. There's no telling what this might lead to.
Marriage.
Oh, he is a catch. Any girl would be so lucky to... No, not marriage. Not to Ralph, or to Steve Hunter, or to Milford.
Milford.
Or Harry, or Chuck, or Vincent, or Pete.
What happened to Greg?
So
Haven't changed a bit, have I?
They look exactly the same.
yes,
So-
you do. Absolutely.
I am curious. You everything I've read about you and meeting you, you're incredibly grounded as a person.
Mhm.
How much of that had to do with, I don't know what your upbringing was at all, but how much of that had to do with the family you came from?
A lot. Almost the whole thing. I had a mom and a dad, and I had two big brothers and a big sister. And I was the last one. I was kind of a mistake. They weren't expecting me.
Mhm.
I said, well, thanks, Mom. But I found that out. And when I first started working as a child, one of the first things I did was like Night of the Hunter with Robert Mitchum and Lillian
Wow.
Gish, directed by Charles Laughton. This
And
is a
Shelley
big-
Winters. Yeah.
Shelley Winters, who was
I love,
fabulous.
oh my God, Shelley Winters.
It was just a wonderful movie. And so that was the first thing I did. And then I started not going to school. I was going to Transfiguration like a good Catholic girl. And I would miss some of my classes. And so my mom said, oh, well, don't tell anybody you're working in a movie or TV. Just say that you were out. So it became very sub rosa, and it was not heralded or like, ha, look at me. You know, I'm on this movie. I am in this. So she's the one that really kept my sensibility. At the same token, I never heralded, here is me. and this is why we have PR people, right?
Right. No, that's a good point. My mother always said, you know, you should never blow your own horn. You should wait for other people to blow it for you, my Scotch-Irish mother. But what I learned in my life is if you didn't start blowing your own horn, there'd be 10 other people that would be blowing their horn and they would get the job.
Exactly. And I think that my mom and yours were at some, you know, point in that same Irish kind of thing. But yeah, at one point you say, look, I have to create my own life. I'm not my past. I'm creating my own life. And if you have the backbone and the sensibility to do that, then you go ahead with it.
Mhm.
Right.
So now you're originally from California, right? Long Beach?
I am.
Uh-huh. And
Oh,
were
yeah.
your parents in entertainment? Like, how did you stumble into that? Or, I mean, Night of the Hunter, that's huge. We're working with them. That
huge.
would have been an amazing, like right out of the gate, an amazing professional experience for you. I'm sure you learned a lot from that.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's from my sister. I don't know whether it's her fault or was a blessing. But my sister, they were all from Oklahoma. And my sister at 3 years old was reading. And, when she started school, she skipped the first 3 grades. So she was very, very smart. And at 3, that was unusual for a child to read. Now they can with technology and everything.
Right. But you're right. Back in those days was a different story.
Absolutely. And they didn't even start until they were 6. Well, my dad was an architect, and they moved from Oklahoma to California.
Oh.
And that's where I was born. And because my mom had 3 other kids, she really couldn't give my sister and the other kids, they didn't get into the entertainment world. My sister graduated UCLA at 19. She was really smart. Yeah. But then there I was left with my mom, this little girl, and I started singing and dancing at the Meglin Studios. And this was a studio in Hollywood where Shirley Temple was discovered.
I love that. I love that.
And so my mom, of course, thought, well, I will be the next Shirley Temple and put my hair in little curls all the time. I wasn't the next Shirley Temple, but I became Kathy Garver, and she's still around and having fun. So for the Night of the Hunter, it's, as you know, there's so much networking, and one person tells the other person, well, they're doing this and that. So my mother's sister had her kids in the business, and they said they're looking for a double for Sally Jane Bruce, who is the little girl that was already cast. And I didn't know anything about that. But I was 8, and I had been singing and dancing, and this was her first movie. So they needed someone that could listen and that could, move. And I remember, and it was that I was with Charles Lawton, and he said, run down this street that was next to the great big center. So I ran down the street, and he says, well, that was very fast. Now run down the street as a 6-year-old would run. So then I ran a little bit more awkwardly. Uh-huh. So at that moment, then he said, okay, she's perfect. So I did that movie, and I did all of her scenes, and in the boat going down and in the hayloft. And if you've ever seen this movie, it was way above its time, and it got awful reviews. And Charles Lawton, this was the first movie he had ever directed, and he says, I'm never going to direct another movie.
Oh no!
Turns out this is one of the best movies. It is like I forget what, in the best horror films ever made. It was like a German expressionist movie, and
it was ahead of its time. Obviously,
way ahead. But it got its due, and I was there to witness it. And Robert Mitchum coming in as a crazed preacher, knocking down jelly and jam jars in the basement. But yeah, that was a really, and it was followed by, from horror to holy, the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Oh my God, and a wonderful director.
Yes, I was just going to say, so, and Cecil B. DeMille, in a Cecil B. DeMille movie, oh my God.
As a kid, my God.
and they also, didn't they write, there you are. There you
go. And a little girl with the dark hair.
But didn't they write an additional scenes or they extended your character? Is that correct?
Well, what happened, I was just hired to be an extra on the movie among hordes of extras. So I went through the process, and by that time, now I had an agent, Hazel McMillan. And so I went there, and I'm doing my scene, and I'm holding this little lamb. And during the exodus, all of a sudden I hear this big voice boom out, "Don't let that little girl's face get in the camera." I said, "Oh, what did I do?" I said, "Who is that? Is that God?"
I know. That's
right. The 10 Commandments.
We're doing the 10 Commandments. And plus, there is this man on the top of this great big crane, way up, at Paramount. And so we followed his directions. And then and we did the scene, and I got off the wagon. DeMille comes over, he talks to me, etc.
Oh, wow.
And so then he writes scenes into the movie for me with Charlie Heston, and then this scene. And he was wont to do that because he was formulating these grandiose epics. And how to make that real.
Right.
And he would pick somebody out just there. And this is how the movie got to be 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, let's make another scene, and let's make another scene over there. But anyway, it was that was a great experience. Fabulous.
But when it was pointed out to me that you were that character, I remembered all your scenes. You know, that was that's such an interesting process that he has.
Yes, it was my stage presence that you remembered too.
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously, Kathy, it was your stage presence that had DeMille write all this extra scene for you. You know, listening to you, right? There was this spark that you were born with. Obviously, you could sing, you could dance. And you were not going to be an extra in that film because you stood out. That face with her, I could see you with your lamb.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Kathy with her lamb.
I love lambs.
So do I. It was just, you had me at the baby lamb. I'm like, oh, that's so cute.
Oh my goodness.
So you went on. This was interesting to me. I think it was after Family Affair. So you already had a career that was rocking and rolling. But after Family Affair, you went back to college to get a master's. That in particular, I have never heard of anyone doing that was already an established, and you were well established in all these different areas. What made you think that you wanted to do that?
I just felt that I needed more education. And I was hired to go to Israel and do a musical of Family Affair, Hamishpaka Shekazot. And I learned Hebrew for this presentation, and we did it in Haifa and around. And while I was there, I said, well, I don't feel like going back to the States. And I feel that I hadn't had a classic education in theater. So I went to London and I signed up for the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art.
Wow.
Which one can do if they're like a SAG member, and at that time, which was a couple of years ago. And so I got that education and came back. And coming off of the series, it's difficult to like dig in again. And what are you going to do? So I had that. And then I went all over the United States. That's when they were doing dinner theater. Now, that wasn't exactly Shakespeare, I had just done, but I did know sitcom and I knew comedy. And when I then landed back home in California, I said, well, I want to finish up, I finished up my degree in speech. You wouldn't know since I don't talk very much. In speech with a minor in psychology. And then I said, well, I'm going to get, I was at the crossroads. I said, should I be a lawyer, or should I, get my master's? I didn't know. I took the LSATs and I was accepted to Loyola and UCLA. And then I said, I don't know about these lawyers. I don't believe them all the time.
Believe me, most lawyers are actors. So.
They are. But they can, they're writers also, and they kind of construct their whole plan. So I decided, no, I'm going to stay in, get my master's in theater arts, which was fun. Except standing on like a 50-foot Klieg ladder to do a Klieg light. I didn't like that part. But I didn't like the lighting part.
But it's amazing how much you've done and then continued every aspect of this industry. Let's get to the fact that you've taught speech. That you have been able to do that. That's a whole other thing. Well, in one of the books that I have written, I've written like 5 books now, but in my second book, Surviving Cissy, which is like my memoir, and the life of actors and singers or whatever, you have them and then you don't, and then you're working and then you're not. And it's a very uneven kind of career that one has. Absolutely. So when I was teaching, I taught voiceover for like 20 years. I would tell my students, even in voiceover, I said, you have to explore all the different aspects. It isn't just that you can narrate an audiobook. I taught audiobook. I've done like about 80 audiobooks. Amazing. And I said, it isn't just that
you were going to limit yourself to being a character and doing animated voices, and how much fun is that? Or you're going to just be do industrials, or you're going to do commercials and look at commercials. They're either a spokesperson. It's very vast. It isn't just voiceover. So I said, well, if I'm on stage, that's great. Now I'm not doing the play anymore. Okay, well, I think I'll write a book. Oh, okay, that book is finished. Now what can I do? Oh, okay, well, maybe I'll do a voiceover type thing. So they were all aspects of entertainment that we all know, and to develop skills in each one of those places.
Brilliant.
Where we plug it in.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the thrust of my life. And you got to do it yourself, unfortunately. You can have agents, you can have managers, you can have PR people. I still get 80% of my jobs myself.
And also in college, you were studying communication, speech, and psychology, which is all part of acting. It's all part of what you were teaching as well.
Right, exactly. So it's all connected. I think everything's connected. Like even anthropology, like I was reading about Wendy, and she was an anthropologist, and that was my first major in college. So if you understand who man is, or a Homo sapien,
you're an actor, right? You're going to
Ablicus.
connect with people on an anthropological level. For me, it's why do I interview people? It's intense. I absolutely love every minute of interviewing people, and I can find like the smallest thread, and I can just go with it. My God, how blessed, right? To be so fascinated by people. It is really incredible. I just want to go back to something you said, though, because it's important that you get 80% of the jobs that you get by yourself. When you when you wear so many hats, and Tim and I talk about this all the time, it is often hard in our industry. People need to pigeonhole people. They have an incredible need to do that. And if you're an actor, you're an actor. Okay, you can get away with an actor that may do voiceovers, but they might want the person that only does voiceovers. It is still so cliche that way. When you do a lot of things, I find I'm constantly having to defend the fact that I not only do a lot of things, I do them well. And yes, those are all the things that I do. I am not choosing one over another. I'm sure you have been faced with that sometimes in trying to define who you are.
Well, I think it's opening up more. And now I see listed on one's email the different things is, producer, host, speaker, author. And I think it's becoming more well known. And when stars started doing animated films for Disney, and they would have Robin Williams as one of their voices. And that was, I think, a predecessor. So you can go from starring in an animated film with just your voice and also do a movie. And also, having started as a TV person. When I think that stars started their own production companies and they had more control over their lives. I had an incredibly good friend and kind of mentor, Jimmy Doolittle, and he was an impresario, and he was general manager of the Huntington Hartford Theater in Los Angeles, which became the James Doolittle Theater. And he was also a guide for another presentational hall where they had singers, etc. And we were good friends, and we put together a play, Vanities. It had already been done, but we made up a tour. And his philosophy is, he said, well, you just have to hoist your own sails and go along the water. And if you are like down and nobody's hiring me, and I'm old and I'm fat and I'm not tall enough, I'm too short enough, I have brown, I don't have. If you start going down that alley, you say, hey, well, that's going to be very depressing. So I said, well, all right, and people can say, I am in charge of my own life, and I can make something happen. In my third book, and the ex-child stars, there were lots of ex-child stars that say, entertainment isn't for me. I can't do this. There are people became lawyers, people, opened their own business, or they did some ancillary business type things that would enhance their entertainment career.
Of course.
So I think you have to take that whole thing. Like Butch Patrick is a really good friend of mine, and
Yeah.
he was from the Munsters, and talking about being entrepreneurial, and he has like all kinds of kitchen and tchotchkes that say the Munsters and that he sells, and Tony Dow and Jerry Mathers from Leave It to Beaver have cups with their names on them, and I have my line of Sissy candles. And
you have the candles. I know. I went to your
I have candles. I used to have candy bars.
Sissy candles.
Right. So Butch now it has been hired by this entertainment amusement park, and they're setting up a whole like Munster
Nice.
the Munster Museum, and he's having classic stars come and
How
we chat and we
cool.
do so you milk it until it's really gone.
That is it exactly, and keep reinventing, keep reinventing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. You're watching If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tim Moss, and our amazing and wonderful guest, the one and only Kathy Garver. Yay! Kathy, who is an author and an actress and a teacher and a producer, and I think you were directing, and yes, I mean, you do everything.
Just doing it all.
Well, I wasn't quite finished with Family Affair. There's a lot in there that I just kind of wanted to touch on, and not all of it is pleasant. Anissa Jones and Johnny Whitaker, who played Buffy and Jody. Anissa, it was an overdose. Is that correct? That at a very young age,
18. That's crazy.
And so sad. It just seemed to be kind of a victim of that, what many child stars experience or go through. Is that your opinion, that the fame, everything it's very fleeting, and it can be taken away very quickly, and kind of lose the identity or lose a person's identity, especially at a young age?
Yeah.
Yes, in my book. Okay, I'll show it to you.
Yes, please. Any books, hold up to the camera. There we go.
Okay, there's my ex-child star book. And as I say, being in college, like a psychologist, but I'm not, but having dipped my toe into psychology as well as the writing, etc. And having been a child star myself and observed some of my peers and went along with them, specifically for Family Affair. Anissa was raised by a divorced mother, and she had one older brother who appeared on our show sometimes. But you have to look at her circumstances. Here's a 9-year-old, and she'd done like a commercial in one thing before that. So she really was a virgin actress coming into this, like, what do I do?
Thrust onto the national stage. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But she was very smart little girl and adorable and kind. She was a very kind person. But her mother was kind of a stage mother, and pushed her here and there and everywhere. And at the end of the show, she really didn't. And here she was, almost a teenager, still wearing the pigtails and little short dress and knee socks, and carrying poor Mrs. Beasley. Mrs. Beasley, who was just the delight of so many little girls and boys. They loved.
I love
Mrs. Beasley. And she's still around. They're still making her. And I still sell them. I'm going to I'm celebrity grand marshal of the Garden Grove Strawberry Festival, and I'm bringing Mrs. Beasley's with me. And
fabulous!
And my candles. So then she didn't want to really pursue it anymore, and unfortunately, she got into a wrong crowd. In my research for this book and in my knowledge, what knocked so many of the tweeners off the rails was drugs. Was drugs. And that depression that comes when you're constantly in front of the lights and people are fussing over you, the makeup and the wardrobe, and you're appearing and people are applauding, and then
it feels as though that's going to last forever.
Right.
Yes, because that's, as at such a young age, that is your experience of life and entertainment. So unfortunately, that depression sets in. And then a lot of them, tried to get work and couldn't. It's that one, like, tween time that's so
Right.
difficult.
Mhm.
And sometimes people ask me, says, well, do you think it's better now? And no, it's worse
Yeah.
because of all the social media.
Yeah.
And you might get someone that, has 1 million and 2 million people saying,
Right.
that was the worst sweater. How could you possibly wear that sweater? That
Yeah.
red was really awful on you. Well, that hurts,
Yeah.
the 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds feelings a
They
little
can
bit.
hurt on a massive level now too. I mean,
Yeah.
and you look at kids like Lindsay Lohan, or we're talking about child stars. But again, I said to you early on, you must have had a very strong sense of family. Buffy had a stage mom. I also read that her brother died of a drug overdose. That's
Mm.
2 kids in one family.
Wow.
When you don't have this strong footing, and it doesn't always have to be a mom and dad. I know people that have been raised by grandparents,
Mhm.
right? But they've got that solid thing behind them. If you don't have that solid thing, and you said it, you're out there as a performer, a child performer, and then the rug is pulled out from under you because you become a teenager, and then what? And then what?
Right. Now, on Family Affair, you also suffered, or you experienced loss in that. First, was it Sebastian Cabot? He was the first.
Anissa was first.
Oh, Anissa was.
Anissa was first, and then Sebastian,
Uh-huh.
and then Brian.
And then Brian.
And
Uh-huh.
then Brian. And unfortunately, Johnny was on drugs and alcohol too.
Yeah.
And so he was Mormon, and his family said, look, if you don't get off, because he was then penniless, and and he always claims that his parents did not save his money. They spent it on his 7 brothers and sisters.
He's Mormon.
That's another thing. I mean, drugs, the parents spending the money, and
Right.
the own person's proclivity, the child's proclivity for maybe a little depressiveness that comes. And we're all depressed, sometimes. We're not all sunshine and flowers. But if there's some way that you can deal with depression, I kind of like God. I like him or her a lot. So I said, well, what are we doing now? And then, as old as I am, I have a 31-year-old son who has never left home. He was gone for about 3 months. He likes it here. And not only has he not flown the nest, he asked little birdies to come and stay with us as well. So I have his girlfriend of 7 years that also live.
God bless you. Have enough room. I have a 29-year-old that's home. I'm hoping, like in the fall, she keeps saying she's, going to be getting an apartment with her boyfriend. But yeah, she's home, and I'm in a New York apartment.
Did she bring her boyfriend in too?
There's just no room, thank God. No room at the inn. But yeah, I hear you. But kids do that now.
They do.
Yeah.
But I must tell you what she brought to the house, and what I thank her every day are affirmations. So it is not only God. I do these affirmations, and they are such a help.
Yes. Yes.
I attract abundance.
Right.
Yes.
I am safe.
Amen.
I am safe, and all will be well. I expect good health. All of these things every day. And, that say, I am grateful and I am fulfilled. All those things help keep you on a steady pace. So if you don't get things, and I still Zoom interviews and go here, and I said, I'm perfect for this role. Why did I not get this role? I said, well, you people really don't know, what you're missing. But
you know what I say, Kathy? It can be anything, okay? And I'm happy you're doing those affirmations. I do them too. And instead of looking for what's wrong, okay, none of us should do that. We have to go with the yeses and take what's right. And there's so many things right when you think about it. My God.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Do you agree, Tim?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I love affirmations. They really strike a chord deep in the soul.
Yes.
Because the thing is not only saying that, but feeling it.
Right. Yes. I like it when it says, I am very strong. My husband yesterday, because unfortunately my poor dog is dying, and he says, you're taking such good care, and you're doing everything you can. Don't be sad. He says, you're very strong. And I said, well, thank you, honey. But I am strong. You have to develop and know that you're strong inside and can handle things. No matter what, there's a solution. The answer is always in front of you. There is a solution to something. and
And-
hopefully it's the right one.
Right. And no matter what is happening, it's temporary. Good or
Yeah.
bad, usually.
That's exactly right. Time
yeah.
changes and feelings always change
Mhm.
every day. And it's important to remember that. I certainly think the pandemic for me was a big wake up call because I'm a Capricorn. I need stability all the time. And suddenly I went into inside out world. It ended March 12th.
Mhm.
Every single thing that I did, stone cold stopped. And I couldn't quite, as a planner and organizer, always having the ground beneath my feet, I was suddenly hanging off a cliff along with everybody else. Okay.
But you didn't drop off it like my husband did. And actually, I was very blessed, I must say. And we live in this kind of protected place anyway, in this Bell Canyon, and we got a gate there and all that stuff. But I flew to Houston and did a movie. I flew to Cleveland and did a pilot. I did a commercial, 2 commercials here, 3 commercials here with, Shields so, and especially California, it's like, they're going to lock down everybody. That's why I flew to different places and was able to keep up my career and write a new book.
Yes.
So
Brilliant.
Just taking that time to utilize, and I cleaned up this house that was just kind of a mess. Organize the closets, and that was a good thing, Wendy, to have your feet done. When you're organized, you try and get
clean. When it's clean,
that really helps.
Yes. Everything has its place. I have a question I wanted to ask you about Family Affair that was very interesting. The Feddersen method and how it was shot. Could you talk about that? That was a very interesting way of shooting a show.
Yes, and it was kind of historic because it was right when film was changing and this little black box was there of TV. And Don Feddersen had done the Lawrence Welk show, and he had started the Betty White show way back, like in the 50s.
Lovely.
And he had that experience. So he wanted to have stars be into his television shows, but stars were not, well, I'm not going to, be in that little black box. I want to be on the great big screen. So he devised this method where he said, okay, Brian Keith or Glenn Ford, who was approached before Brian, or Fred McMurray of My Three Sons, which lasted like 12 seasons. And that was the first one. And he says, look, Fred, you can still do your movies. You only have to work on this television series for like a month and a half. That's it. And then you are free to go do all of your other things. Well, that was pretty appealing. But the icing and strawberry festival on the cake was that they got a part of the show, the financial part of the show. And that had never been done before. Oh, you hire an actor, the actor does this thing, maybe he'll get some residuals, but he doesn't own a piece of it. And that's why so many actors started their own production company.
Right.
But at that time, that was kind of unheard of. Only Lucille Ball had done anything like that. And so they said, here, you get a part of the show. And that's the Feddersen method. And that worked well.
Wow. That was
it worked well for Brian Keith.
Yeah,
and
very
Sebastian Cabot got a little piece of the show as well.
Wow.
Not the kids.
Because you, like, from what you said, they could come and go, but you all were like, they had to shoot all your scenes no matter what. And you all were there again and again.
Yes. And I'm sorry, Tim.
Oh, I was just going to say that I know there were times when, like, Brian Keith would only be there on certain days, and you had to shoot your scenes with a stand-in.
Right. So what happened, and again at that time we shot like maybe 39 episodes. That's really diabolical. And we shoot 8 episodes now in arcs and binge watching or whatever. But we had 39 episodes. They all had to be written at the beginning of the season. So we would know that, okay, these are Brian's scenes. Then we would have to go back and pick up all the scenes in the same episode that Brian had already been filmed in. So that made it very difficult for the script supervisor, the wardrobe person.
Right.
I a couple times took my wardrobe home with me, and they And then like 3 months later, they said, well, now whatever happened to that blouse with the
Oh no, for the continuity.
Oh, I couldn't find it then. It was at home. So there's one episode, and I'm supposed to be playing a hippie, and I had worn this medallion necklace, and well, it was gone. I don't know where it went. And so Thelma Strom, our wardrobe person, went out and got something that was almost exactly like it. But if you look really closely, you can see the, differentiation between the two necklaces. That necklace now is in a museum in Chicago through my friend Paul Lisnek, who has a wing in the Arts and Communications Museum, and with a picture and the medallion hanging.
And the story, I hope, behind it. I hope the story is there too. That's a great story.
I did find it, I must say. But I did find it eventually, like 10 years later.
Once again, you're watching If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our amazing and wonderful and just absolutely delightful guest, Kathy Garver. Yay. Now, yesterday here in New York City, we had a subway shooter and who released gas canisters and all of this. And on Facebook, I went on and said that I wanted to kick his ass. And I got banned from Facebook for 2 days for saying that, for inciting violence. I'm the bad guy. So unfortunately, normally this show is aired on Facebook Live, on my Facebook Live. So we had to change it over to Wendy's because I couldn't do it today. So we don't have as many. Yeah. We don't. So unfortunately, we don't have as many comments as we normally do, but we do have a lot of people that are
here. Yeah.
Yeah. So Sue Stutzman says, hi, dolls.
Hello.
Marty Albutcher says, you look gorgeous.
Thank you.
What was this? B. Claudia from Germany. She says, can we please say how fabulous and charming Kathy Garver looks?
Yes, let's say that. Thank you, B. Claudia.
Thank you, Claudia.
Daryl Demure says sends hearts. And let me see, there was another one down here. Steve Walker. Oh, Steve Walker says subway shooter has been caught, just announced.
Oh, really? Is it the same one that was the person of interest?
I don't know. He just said the subway shooter's been caught.
I love when they write person of interest. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they found the van because he had left the key.
The van, right?
And so the person that had rented it was somebody. So then that was the person of interest, but they didn't know if the person that rented the van was the same person that shot. And
that's what they were looking for. Daryl Demure, he wrote heartbreaking, must have referring to our other conversation.
And Richard Skipper says, I'm here.
Richard.
Hey, Richard. Oh, and B. Claudia just wrote, she says, I bought the book. So
oh my God. Oh, wow.
Which one? Did you get the Family Affair scrapbook? That's the newest one, or Surviving Cissy?
I think the one you held up.
Oh, the ex-child stars.
Yeah, ex-stars, yeah. And Steve Walker says yes. So I'm assuming he means that they did catch it was the person.
It was the person of interest.
Right, the person of interest. Just like you, Tim, were a person of interest on Facebook, which is how you got
right.
Well, you know something. You can't even say like, and this happened to a friend of mine. He says, well, I went to shoot yesterday. Well, she's going to shoot a commercial.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and I can't say, well, I was shooting this commercial, but she just says, I'm going to shoot tomorrow.
So she got flagged.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Because they think the only kind of shooting is bang bang and not shooting a film, or
well, actually, I appealed it and I wrote them a very long.
Good.
Good.
But now, Kathy, you and I first met here in New York City through Penny Landau. Do you remember Penny? Yes. PR. Yes. I am going to be spending some time with Penny next month, because she's in Southern Florida and I'm going to be down there doing for the entire month of May. I'm doing the musical Little House on the Ferry. It's a campy gay musical about Fire Island. It's so much fun. So I am going to get to see her for a couple days while I'm down there, which is wonderful.
Please give
And
her my love and
yes,
tell her hi. She
absolutely. And then,
usually calls me every Easter. He says, "I'm watching Ten
yeah,
Commandments."
Oh, how funny. Oh my God, it's coming up too.
Yeah,
yeah.
it played last weekend, so it had
Hmm.
a lot of
Wow. Wow.
votes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then then we saw each other again in Palm Springs at Paul Bacito's, who is I can't think, what is the name of the film?
Um, I can't
Yeah.
think of it either right now. It's Palm Springs Cinema, but his thing is I can't remember it right
Yeah,
now. either.
because I was doing my cabaret show on one side of town and you were doing your book signing on the other side of town, so we
How
couldn't get to
funny.
each other's. So we met at Paul's afterward, which was
That's
great.
right. And I'm going back to Just Fabulous. May 1st, we're having Classic TV Authors Day. So I'm going to, and I'm kind of setting it up with Steve Monkarsh, who is the owner of Just Fabulous. So we're having Paul Peterson from Donna Reed Show.
Oh
and-
my God. Oh, he was so handsome. I was
yeah.
so
Yeah,
in love with him.
absolutely. And Darby Hinton from Davy Crockett. And
Oh yeah.
and then we're also having Joyce Bulifant from Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Joyce.
And we've all written these autobiographies. So they're all bringing them. Paul is a pictorial book of the Donna Reed Show, and Darby is Growing Up Israel. Joyce is my 4 Hollywood husbands. So I'm doing all my books.
Well, now,
These are
do you
my
have,
books. This
I
one
was
you've
just going to
seen.
say, yeah, that one we saw. Please show us all of your books.
Okay, so this is my first one that I wrote. It's a family affair cookbook. I love to cook. I have a couple cooking shows on YouTube. And then came my autobiography, which was Surviving Cissy. I lived in here to tell about it. Then came my other cookbook, which is Holiday Recipes for a Family Affair. And I cook with my friend Scott Weaver. And so we have that show on YouTube. And this is my latest book. This just came out a couple months ago.
Yay.
And this is the Family Affair Scrapbook.
I
And
love that.
Oh.
Wow.
It's so bright, and it has so many great pictures in it. And it's reminiscent of the 60s, but I hate to admit that it is the 55th anniversary of Family Affair this year. And so this was kind of to celebrate it. And this book, which came out in hardcover, came out now in paperback, which is a little cheaper, but the words are the same.
It's right. Words are never cheap, Kathy.
No, they're not. No, they're not, Wendy.
I know you've done a lot of audiobooks. Have you ever done it? Did you do with any of your books?
Oh yeah, I did Surviving Cissy as an audiobook and Ex-Child Stars as an audiobook. I just finished doing In the Presence of Greatness, which is about Patty Duke. And it was written by Robert Jankowski. And he had put together and assimilated all these interviews that he had done with Patty, which were great. Unfortunately, she passed away before the book came out. But I was honored to read the book and narrate the book as an audiobook. And I had known Patty ever since I played her friend on the Patty Duke Show. I played Monica, and we were and so we were friends. And so as I'm reading this book, it's like her spirit is like just there, and I try, and her voice, I didn't do anything really to analyze or figure out what kind of voice, but it was just there. And her voice just came out. And so that was a really wonderful project for me to do. And with the audiobook.
Yeah, and almost a tribute. Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. I just hosted a marathon for the Patty Duke Show on a new network called Classic TV Reruns. And so there was like interstitials, and I would talk a little bit about Patty and how the Patty Duke Show went down. And then in June, there's going to be a marathon and a celebration for now I can't remember the name of it. What's that? Petticoat Junction. So
I love that. Bobby Joe, Betty,
all those Joes.
And Uncle Charlie.
Was it Uncle Joe or Charlie?
Uncle Joe or Uncle
that's
Charlie.
Uncle Joe. He's moving kind of slow at the junction. Petticoat Junction.
That's it.
Stuff affects you. You remember all of it.
And when they say, and I am getting a little more doddering, but in an old people's house and home, and people may have a little dementia or whatever. You play a song like the Petticoat Junction or da 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 da, and they perk up and they say, and it's amazing to see, because I guess music affects more than just words.
The parts of the brain.
Music is one of the only mediums that affects so many different senses that like I will hear a song, and like a disco song, and it'll take me back to a specific night, a specific club. I can smell the club. I can remember the lights. You know what I mean? It's amazing how music can do that.
It can. And especially you as an actor, are very sensitive to all those things, because that's how we construct a scene too. Right. What would it smell like? Where were we? The setting. I just wanted, because I'm such a self-promoter, to let all your listeners know that they can get any of my books on my website, which is kathygarver.com, KATHYGARV.
There we go. There's the banner.
Oh, there it is. Good job.
Thank you, Chauncey.
Yeah. And I'll sign them. If you don't want them signed, you can, of course, go to Amazon. And if you want any of my audiobooks, you can go to audible.com and just put in Kathy Garver and search for the audiobooks. They're all there. And like me on Facebook. They like me. That always reminds me of Sally Field when she gets the Oscar. They like me. They really like me.
And we can get your candles on your website as well.
Yes. Yes, my candles. Yes. And room spray. And I do a lot of voiceovers. So one of my characters was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I was looking around they brought out a little action figure for Firestar this year. And so the only thing, her head comes off. So I'm not, and there's another head. I'm not really crazy about being decapitated, but they're very cute little figures. They are. And I have those as well.
Wonderful. So, I love that. I love how it
enterprises. About the action figures being decapitated. Yeah, there's something like that's just not right about that.
I know it. It's something you can lose your head over, I guess.
Now, Richard Skipper also said you are perfect reading his book on Patty Duke. Brilliant.
Oh, thank you,
Richard.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, a movie I star in, which is called Junk. We're going to be having the Palm Springs premiere, which will be like, I think in January, either January or February of 2023. So hopefully I'll let you know, and hopefully we can get together in Palm Springs again.
Oh, I would love that.
Because I know you've got a history in Palm Springs. The Walk of Stars. Don't you have a star on the Walk of Stars?
I have a star on the Walk of Stars, and that precipitated the show that I did that's on Roku, and you can watch it at any time, I found out, because it's streaming. So you just put in what's his name, Perkle and ZP TV, and on Roku, and then you can search for the Star Watch. And I did that. I love Palm Springs. I had a condo there for 30 years.
Oh, nice.
That's why I thought you were living there. Yeah, I know a lot of people there. What a beautiful place, except in summer.
But now also, you had an encounter on a tennis court, did you not?
Well, yes. I dated a lot. And then I started getting older and older. I said, well, excuse me, I would like to have a baby. I only, had dolls and carriages, from the time I was 3 till 12. I said, why are all these people married? I'm not married. So at 35, I'm 33, I'm looking around. I said, this has got to stop. I have to get married. So I was in Palm Springs, and I was playing tennis with Arlene Galanka, who was on the Andy Griffith Show, and her boyfriend. And so I said, oh, and we're going to get a fourth. I said, okay, the next person that walks on this tennis court, I'm going to marry. Put that into my mind. And so we start playing tennis, and the 6'3" kind of guy comes on. I'm 5'1". This 6'3" guy comes on, and so we start playing tennis, and I smacked it. Finally, a woman that can play tennis. I'm going to get married, and I'm going. T. So 40 years later, here we are.
That is great.
And that's why it gives, I love Palm Springs.
Absolutely.
But also, you've been married, you said 40 years. So obviously he was the one, the only one for you.
Well, rationally, I'm a rational person as well as an emotional person.
That's an interesting
as you can tell. Okay, this is what's going to happen, now, and now we're going to find a house here. But yeah, I liked it. He's a very nice person. I think you have to like the person.
Right.
Love can be fleeting, but if you find the person and the person is kind and funny and
you share the same values.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, and unfortunately, David had suffered an accident a few months ago, and he's still in recovery. So we want to send him loving, healing energy for a speedy recovery and a full recovery.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That's much appreciated. He fell down a cliff. There aren't a lot of people that fall down cliffs, but unfortunately, this was a 180-foot cliff. But he is recovering, and thank you so much for the well wishes.
Thank God, right?
Yeah.
Thank God.
For sure.
Well, again, I just absolutely adore you. You're got such a beautiful soul and such a beautiful heart, and it's always such a pleasure to talk to and spend time with. And we are very grateful that you spent some time with us.
Totally grateful. I wanted to ask you. There's a quote that I looked at. The hardest thing is being accepted as someone who has depth. Talk about that, where that came from, and.
Well, and you, I think, had said before, it's kind of hard, and sometimes you get pigeonholed into some things. If you can just do a voice, or just a voiceover person, or just an actor, sometimes people will just look at you and
judge you.
I hate to, people just they say, oh well, she's blonde and she's little, and so she probably is just blonde and little, unless you talk to someone or unless you prove yourself, but. I don't go out there proving myself. I just go out there and I say, well, yeah, I'm blonde and little, but I'm really smart. And, when you talk with people, then they get to know you. But I think a certain way is just the way you present yourself. And I think you can't worry about the way you look. I mean, I think that personally, you just have to go to moment and live that moment who you are. Yeah. And if people think you're one way, well, they can think that, but that's not who you are.
That's their problem. As Tim said, that's their problem.
That's their problem. And if I get mad and if I yell at somebody, how could she yell? She's too little to yell. So, yeah, don't get me mad.
Right.
Don't get me mad.
Don't really get me mad, right? Look out.
I've done a lot of spiritual work over the years, and one of my favorite lines is, "What other people think of me is none of my business."
Right.
That's a good line. That's true. That's true. But sometimes, when if you're doing auditions, and I do a lot of auditions, I had a good friend, and she says, Kathy, when you die, they're going to say on your graveyard, on your gravestone, she says, no, Kathy's not here. She's out on another audition. And that's when we went out on auditions instead of Zoom. I love to Zoom.
Right.
But then you kind of construct yourself, or I do, on the character that they're looking for. And I go to all these lengths about dressing exactly right and making my voice, or, how I'm walking. And so, and I was thinking the other day, well, that's nice to transport yourself to somebody else so you can play different people, and you don't have to be your real self all the time. You can have fun being a princess in Austria.
There you go. It all goes back to being that princess in Austria.
Yeah. Full circle.
I love that. Well, Kathy Garver, thank you so very much. This was just a true delight. We really appreciate your taking the time and spending with us.
My pleasure. It was so much fun. I'll see you in Palm Springs in January.
Oh, yay! All right.
And I hope to see you again too, Wendy. Thank you.
Yes, you will. I'm going to Palm Springs, not in January, but I have a lot going on. So yes, if you're there, I'm going to be there. I don't know when yet, but it's an incredible place. And bless you that you had 30 years living there. My God.
Yeah, I would go back and forth. And May 1st, I'll be there for Classic TV Authors Day at Just Fabulous.
That's great.
You're there that weekend. That would be ideal.
And again, for everything Kathy Garver, it's Kathy with a K. Go to kathygarver.com.
Thank you, Tim.
Everything Kathy. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.